Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is KP Mily. She is a mom with a son who has autism, and she decided to write a book. The book is called One Magical Day, My Journey Through the Autism Spectrum. So as we were talking about way back when you initially discovered that your son had autism, an amount of time went by, there was some adjustment periods. How much later into this did you decide to write this book? Somebody convinced you to, right?
Somebody absolutely convinced me to write this book. We actually, at 8 years old, we had made so many strides, and he was basically doing well, and he could go into, believe it or not, we could go into a restaurant, we could actually go places that we haven't been before. We could never go to the movies. So we were actually doing really well, and I decided for our first family trip, because we had never gone anywhere, he had never slept over at anybody's houses, we decided to take the trip to Disney when he was 8. And as with everything, it took me months of prepping, because you need to prep and you need to get him kind of his head in that mode. So in February I started, and we kind of got him used to the idea. So in April we actually made it, and I can speak as well for myself as well as my husband. If he made it past the airplane ride, we were good.
Wow, is that
I
right?
didn't think anything past that would bother him. Why, I have no idea, but I did. But the airplane ride was wonderful. He loved flying, loved the airplane ride. And,
a lot of people in general, need to have some sort of, sedation while they're on the thing, but he loved it.
He loved it, and I was kind of concerned because I figured once they shut the door, it's going to be a long 3 hours if he absolutely hates the airplane ride. So we got to Florida. We were having a great time. We got to Magic Kingdom. He was all excited, and then basically that day later on, probably about 5 or 6 o'clock at night, the real meltdown started, and it was just way too much for him, and he physically just could not be in Disney any longer.
It was like sensory
sensory
overload,
like I've never seen before, and I hadn't had one of those meltdowns or seen one of those meltdowns since he was little.
By the way, Disney, being a place that serves so many families and so many kids, would they have any expertise on how to deal with anything along these lines at all? No?
They really didn't have anything.
Really?
Okay. They are set up for kids, obviously, but every situation is a little bit different. But that's how it started, and basically it was a really, like I said, it was a really big meltdown. So we had to, I booked a flight that night at 11 o'clock at night to leave the next morning. And when we came back, he was so happy to be back home.
Wow. In
his own house, with his own routine, with his own stuff, and I was not.
Familiarity, goes a long way,
Right.
But you were.
I was not.
Yeah.
I had made it. I figured we had made it so far, and that's when I think my meltdown started, if you want to put it that way. But I really, I came back with a huge chip on my shoulder, a very big chip. And when Mitchell was little, with all of his diagnosis and with all of the evaluations, I was always a positive person, and I went to each evaluation and through each OT session and everything that we needed to do, almost like a proactive person. I kept going and going and going, but when I came back from Disney, I was very, very negative. It's not something I was used to.
Because you kind of, you got through the plane ride, and that was a biggie, and a little bit of the Magic Kingdom, but after that, it just didn't.
That was it. Right. So when I came back, I couldn't get past the negative. Could not get past the negative, and I wanted to get back to where I was before. I've always accepted Mitchell for who he was, and I've never ever tried to change him. But I was really negative. So. And
he's never been put in that environment like that before?
No.
That was a big test for him?
No, that was a big test for all of us. So I don't know how or why I started to do this, but I actually sat down on my computer one day, probably about 4 months after we came back, and I wrote every night for a year, from 9 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning, missing maybe a couple of days here and there. But I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and pretty much filed it away on my computer.
It's kind of like therapy for you. It was like writing down, like a journal in a way.
That's all it was.
What did your husband say about that when you?
He didn't know I was doing it, actually. Oh. He thought I was just, obviously playing on the computer till,
She's playing some game or something.
Something. And so until after I told him, I said, I really didn't, I put it away. And it was supposed to stay locked in my computer. I felt awesome. I was back to the positive person. The chip was gone. And that was it. We were going to move on until one day, brief conversation with one of my friends that I've known for 20 years, didn't know she was a journalism major, and she said, just give me a couple of pages. And I was like, I don't know about that. And she convinced me to give her a couple of pages, and that's how the whole thing started. She's like, she read a couple of pages and said, we need to do this.
And you probably had no idea, first of all, how you would go about writing a book. It's one thing to just kind of write down your thoughts online, or on your computer
Right.
every night, but turning that into a book. How do you publish it? Nowadays with the internet and with all kinds of e-books and iBooks and everything, everybody self-publishes now.
Right. And that was the hard part, actually.
Is that right? Really?
Yeah. The easy part was writing it.
Wow.
Yeah. She didn't really change much.
Okay, I was going to ask that. How do you take your thoughts,
Yeah, no.
which maybe at times, depending on what kind of a mood you're in when you're typing at night, could be all over the road, really, right? And somehow that had to be condensed down into what we have here, into this book, right?
Right. I definitely am a very systematic person.
Okay.
So when I started writing, I started from the very beginning.
So chronological, this thing was from
Absolutely.
start
It was
to
already
finish.
start to finish. And she kind of just tweaked a little things here and there to make it a little bit better. But she really didn't change what I was trying to say, which was it's absolutely the best thing she could have done, because I didn't want somebody to change my thoughts. My thoughts are my thoughts. And I'm definitely one of those Italian, I'm definitely unfiltered. So the way you see it in there is the way it came out, pretty much. So she did an awesome job with it.
And it's not a thick book, so it's not,
No.
it's not, and this an older picture of you on the back. How long ago was that?
That's when he was 2.
Okay.
That's when he was first
So
diagnosed.
that when you first diagnosed.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
this is one thing we were talking about before, too. This is a lay person. This is for someone, there's not a lot of medical,
No.
jargon in here. This is a mom or somebody, just a regular person who may not be plugged into the medical field at all, can read and understand this book, right?
Just from everybody that's read it so far, they have pretty much said that they can put anybody's scenario in there, whether it be autism or whether it be any other kind of issue that somebody's going through. They can absolutely gain or benefit from reading this book, because it is told from my heart. I have no big words in there, no medical stuff in there at all. It's just basically what I went through and how I felt at the time, and what has basically brought me to where I am today.
And one thing I asked you off the air too, for someone else that might be going through this or something similar, support groups, people that you can talk to, other people with similar experiences,
Exactly.
stuff like that in the book too.
It makes you feel like it does. That is absolutely in the book. It makes you feel like you're not alone.
Right.
Like all those
That's so important,
evaluations,
too.
and when my head was spinning, and other mothers want to know that other mothers don't feel this way. Of course they feel that way. When it involves your child and you don't know which direction, I didn't know if he was ever going to talk to me. I didn't know if he was ever going to, tell me he wanted something to drink or something to eat. You had no idea. And that's where where other mothers might say that they felt the same exact way.
Not only about the future of their child, but also their own future, because like you had mentioned, your meltdown, not your son's.
Right.
That you are changed as a person too. Right. Family members are changed, because a lot of times, how you deal with the individual who's got that experiencing it. But what about friends and family around? They need to know what to do and how to deal and how to cope as well too.
And that's absolutely true. In the book, it absolutely says that. It's where I started out, and basically me making it known that he is on the autism spectrum. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to hide. This is what he has. These are the sensory issues. We don't like to go to the movies. We don't like to. There's certain things that they have to be well aware of. The book is basically so that people can. I don't want people to judge. I want them to be less judgmental, and I want them just to be open and accepting. They don't have to understand it. They don't have to be put into my shoes. I'm not looking for sympathy, not looking for anything like that. All I want people to do is realize that if you see somebody out there, there's more to the story than basically meets the eye. So if somebody's not coming to your party for a specific reason, there is other reasons.
Right.
And it's just a book that's supposed to be just help people to be less judgmental, and pretty much be a little bit more aware of what's going on around them or right in front of them.
So if somebody suspects that they might be in a similar situation, maybe their child or a friend's child or a relative's child, what's the first thing they should do?
The first thing they should do is get an evaluation. It's hard because, my husband was on board from the very beginning. I've met so many parents that one parent thinks there's something typical, the other parent doesn't.
Might be in denial, or
Absolutely.
might just think that there's,
Right.
like you said, kind of someone's making it up or
Right.
not understanding it.
And they don't get the help that they need, or they don't get the evaluation, because it's a very hard process to start.
Right.
And once you're started.
You had talked early on about how when you first found out, you read up a lot about it, you did a lot of research and stuff. How plugged into are you, and I know you're not a doctor per se, but how plugged in are you to medical research and advances in the field and how things are today compared to back when your son was just 2 and diagnosed with it? Have there been major advances? Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Or Or are we
tough.
still in the very early?
That's a tough question. He's 10 now, and I said before, we're definitely considered pioneers in this whole thing. The problem they're having now is the children that are older than my son are in high school.
Yeah.
And the high school teachers aren't well equipped to deal with all of the issues that these kids face, because at some point they think that these children should have outgrown their issues, but you don't outgrow autism.
No.
You don't outgrow quirkiness. You don't outgrow all the issues that you have.
Right.
There's just different ways you can meet it. But they have made so much advancement in elementary school is very well adapted. We've had wonderful teachers so far, and they've definitely made strides in elementary school. They've definitely made strides in evaluating children and putting them on the correct diagnosis, but they still have a long way to go.
Once you get to the higher grades, though, now since the regular high schools do seem to be ill-equipped, can someone like your son go to some place that's more equipped to be able to handle them?
Well, you know, in Rhode Island, Hendricken has started a options program, and the options program actually was started by a woman whose son has sensory issues. He's graduated. He was the first graduating class last year from the options program, and Hendricken is doing a wonderful job. They are the only all-boys high school in the state or in the country that has this program right now.
Wow, that's
so
impressive.
Absolutely. So.
One more time, as far as contact information for people to be able to learn a little bit more about it and maybe pick up your book. So where do they go?
They can get it on the website, lulus.com, or they can actually contact me and I will ship it out to them.
The book is One Magical Day, My Journey Through the Autism Spectrum. Katie Mily was our guest today. By the way, you did a great job. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We will see you next time. Take care.